The late afternoon sun hung low over the dusty roads of Millbrook, Indiana, casting long shadows across the weathered asphalt of Route 37. The summer heat had been relentless for weeks, and the air shimmered above the pavement like liquid glass. At the edge of town, where civilization gave way to cornfields and forgotten farmhouses, the Crossroads gas station stood as a lonely sentinel, a relic from better days, with faded red paint and a flickering neon sign that buzzed intermittently. Inside the small convenience store, Marcus Sullivan wiped the sweat from his brow with a calloused hand. At 47 years old, Marcus carried himself with the quiet authority of a man who had seen too much and survived it all. His leather vest bore the patches of the Iron Brotherhood MC, not an outlaw gang, but a veterans motorcycle club dedicated to helping former service members transition back to civilian life. The eagle and flag on his back told a story of Afghanistan, of brothers lost, of a life rebuilt 1 mile at a time on the open road. Standing beside him at the counter were 3 other members of the Brotherhood. Jake Henderson, 32, tall and lean with sandy hair tied back in a ponytail, was buying beef jerky and energy drinks for the long ride ahead. Thomas Doc Whitaker, 51, earned his nickname during his time as a Navy corpsman. He thumbed through a magazine with reading glasses perched on his nose. The youngest of the group, 28-year-old Bobby Crawford, had only been out of the Army for 2 years. His boyish face still carried a hesitance that combat had etched into his eyes. They were heading back from a charity ride in Fort Wayne, where they had raised money for homeless veterans. The ride had been good. Over 200 bikes, thousands of dollars raised, and the kind of camaraderie that made the heat and sore backs worthwhile. Now, they just wanted to get home to Bloomington before dark. Marcus paid for his coffee and a pack of cigarettes, exchanging small talk with the elderly clerk about the weather and the Pacers' chances next season. Outside, their Harleys sat in a neat row, gleaming chrome and black paint, each bike meticulously maintained. These weren't showpieces. They were workhorses, machines that carried men who needed the freedom of the road to process memories that therapy alone couldn't touch. As Marcus stepped back outside into the oppressive heat, he heard it, a sound that cut through the rumble of distant traffic and the buzz of cicadas. A child's scream. High-pitched, desperate, primal. The kind of scream that bypassed rational thought and went straight to the survival instinct buried in every human being. Help! Somebody help! Marcus spun toward the sound, his hand instinctively going to his side, an old reflex from his military days. About 100 yards down the road, emerging from between 2 abandoned buildings that used to house a feed store, a small boy was running. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, wearing torn jeans and a dirty Superman t-shirt. His face was streaked with tears and dirt, his mouth open in continued shouts that grew more frantic with each step. "They're beating my mother. Please, somebody help. They're going to kill her." The other bikers had emerged from the gas station now, all of them turning to watch the child sprinting toward them with everything his small legs could manage. Jake dropped his shopping bag, the contents spilling across the concrete. Doc removed his reading glasses slowly, his eyes narrowing as the boy drew closer. "Jesus Christ," Bobby muttered, already moving toward his bike. Marcus held up a hand, stopping them. "Hold on, let's find out what's happening." He stepped forward, positioning himself in the boy's path. The child nearly crashed into him, his momentum carrying him forward until Marcus caught him by the shoulders, gently but firmly. "Whoa, slow down, son. Catch your breath. Tell me what's going on." The boy's chest heaved, his words coming in gasping sobs. Up close, Marcus could see that the child was terrified. Real, bone-deep terror that went beyond a scraped knee or a nightmare. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated, and his hands trembled violently as they clutched at Marcus's vest. "My mom! They're beating her. Derek and his friends, at our house. She's screaming, and I ran. I ran to get help, but nobody. Please, you have to help her, please." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He had seen enough violence in his life to recognize the signs of real danger in a child's eyes. This wasn't a game, wasn't exaggeration. This was genuine fear for a parent's life. He looked up at Jake, Doc, and Bobby, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their faces. They were all fathers, uncles, brothers. They had all taken an oath once in different branches of the military to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "Where?" Marcus asked, his voice calm but commanding. "Where is your house?" The boy pointed back toward the abandoned buildings, his finger shaking. "Through there, down Maple Street, the blue house with the broken fence, number 42. They came back. Derek came back and he was drunk and he brought his friends, and Mom told me to run. Please, please hurry." Marcus looked down at the boy, seeing not just a terrified child, but every victim he had failed to save in Kandahar, every civilian caught in crossfire, every person who had needed help when there was none to give. "Not this time. Not today." "What's your name, son?" "Tyler. Tyler Mitchell." "Tyler. I'm Marcus. These are my brothers, Jake, Doc, and Bobby. We're going to help your mother, but I need you to stay here. Can you do that? Stay right here at the gas station where it's safe." Tyler shook his head violently, tears streaming down his face. "No, I need to go with you. She's my mom." Doc stepped forward, kneeling down to the boy's level. His voice was gentle, the same tone he had used with wounded Marines in field hospitals. "Tyler, listen to me. The best way you can help your mother right now is by staying safe. We can move faster without worrying about you getting hurt, you understand? We're going to bring her back to you, I promise." Marcus turned to the elderly clerk who had emerged from the gas station, drawn by the commotion. "Call 911. Tell them we have a domestic violence situation in progress at 42 Maple Street. Tell them multiple assailants, possible weapons. You got that?" The clerk nodded, already pulling out his phone as he retreated back inside. Jake was already on his bike, the engine roaring to life. Bobby followed suit, the thunder of Harley engines filling the air. Marcus squeezed Tyler's shoulder once more, a gesture of reassurance, before jogging to his own motorcycle. Doc stayed behind for a moment, pulling out his medical kit from his saddlebag. "Stay with the clerk, Tyler. Do not leave this gas station, no matter what you hear. Your mother is going to need you to be brave right now. Can you be brave?" Tyler nodded, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand, though fresh tears continued to fall. Doc joined the others, and within seconds, all 4 motorcycles were tearing out of the parking lot, following Tyler's directions toward Maple Street. The ride took less than 2 minutes, but to Marcus it felt like an eternity. His mind was already working through scenarios. How many assailants? Were there weapons involved? What was the layout of the house? Were there other civilians at risk? He had done urban operations in Helmand Province. This was smaller scale, but the principles were the same. Get in, neutralize the threat, secure the victim, get out. Let the authorities handle the aftermath. Maple Street was exactly the kind of neighborhood that prosperity had abandoned decades ago. Once proud homes now sagged under the weight of neglect, their yards overgrown, their windows covered with plywood or tattered curtains. A few children's toys lay scattered in one yard, faded plastic in the failing light. A dog barked frantically from behind a chain-link fence. The blue house at number 42 stood out only because of the broken white picket fence that surrounded it, and because of the sounds coming from inside. Marcus heard the screaming before he even shut off his engine. A woman's voice, high and desperate, punctuated by the deeper voices of men shouting, cursing, threatening. The sound of something breaking, wood splintering, more screaming. The 4 bikers dismounted in unison, their movements coordinated through years of riding together and the muscle memory of military training. Marcus gestured. Jake and Bobby would take the back. He and Doc would go through the front. No discussion was needed. They all knew what had to be done. As Marcus approached the front door, which hung partially open on broken hinges, he could hear the violence more clearly now. A man's voice, slurred with alcohol. "You think you can keep my money, you bitch? You think you can keep me away from my own son?" Another voice, laughing. "Derek, man, let's just take what we want and get out of here." A third voice. "Nah, she needs to learn a lesson. They all need to learn." Then the woman's voice again, Sarah Mitchell, gasping between sobs. "Please, Tyler isn't even yours. Please just leave us alone. I'll give you whatever you want." The sound of a slap, flesh on flesh, followed by a cry of pain. Marcus felt the familiar coldness settle over him, the combat mindset that shut down fear and doubt, that focused everything into a singular purpose. He looked at Doc, who nodded once. Then Marcus kicked the door open completely, the wood frame splitting under the force of his boot. "That's enough! Step away from her now!" The scene inside the living room was worse than Marcus had imagined. Sarah Mitchell, a thin woman in her early 30s with blonde hair matted with blood, lay crumpled against the far wall beneath a broken picture frame. Her face was swelling, her lips split, her arms wrapped protectively around her head. Standing over her were three men. The first, presumably Derek Thompson, was in his mid-30s, wearing a stained wife-beater and jeans. His knuckles were bloody, his face flushed with rage and alcohol. He held a beer bottle in his left hand, raised as if to strike. To his right stood a heavy-set man, with a shaved head and tattoos covering his arms. Not the military tattoos of someone who served, but the crude jailhouse ink of someone who had done hard time. The third man was younger, early 20s, with greasy hair and a methamphetamine-thin frame that practically vibrated with nervous energy. All three turned to face the doorway as Marcus and Doc entered. For a moment, the room fell silent except for Sarah's labored breathing. Derek's eyes narrowed, taking in the leather vests, the size of the two men blocking his exit. His lip curled into a sneer. "Who the hell are you? Get out of my house." "Not your house," Marcus said evenly, his voice carrying the authority of command. "And we're not leaving without her. This ends now. Step away from the woman." The heavy-set man took a step forward, his hands balling into fists. "You think you can just walk in here? There's 3 of us and 2 of you, old man. You're about to have a very bad day." Behind them, through the kitchen, the back door opened. Jake and Bobby entered, their presence immediately changing the calculation in the room. 4 bikers, all of them bigger and more capable than the 3 men who had been beating a defenseless woman. Doc moved carefully towards Sarah, keeping his eyes on the assailants, but focusing his attention on the victim. "Ma'am, my name is Thomas Whitaker. I'm a former medic. I'm going to help you, okay? Just stay still." Derek's face contorted with rage. He raised the beer bottle higher, taking a step toward Doc. "Nobody touches her. She's mine. He never finished the sentence. Marcus moved with the speed and precision of someone who had disarmed insurgents in close-quarters combat. One step forward, his left hand capturing Derek's wrist and twisting sharply, forcing him to drop the bottle. It shattered on the hardwood floor. In the same motion, Marcus swept Derek's legs out from under him, driving him face first onto the ground. A knee on his back, an arm locked behind him. Derek was immobilized before he could process what had happened. The heavy-set man lunged at Jake, who sidestepped smoothly and delivered a precise strike to the man's solar plexus. The air went out of him in a whoosh, and he doubled over, gasping. Jake followed up with a controlled takedown, pinning the man against the wall with an armbar that made him cry out in pain. The third man, the tweaker, looked around wildly and bolted for the front door. Bobby intercepted him, not with violence but with sheer mass, body-checking him back into the living room where he stumbled and fell, crawling backward until his back hit the couch. "Stay down," Bobby commanded, his voice brooking no argument. "Don't make this worse than it already is." The entire confrontation had lasted less than 30 seconds. 3 men who had been terrorizing a woman now lay subdued, controlled by 4 veterans who had faced actual combat and found this situation almost mundane by comparison. Marcus kept his knee on Derek's back, feeling the man struggle uselessly beneath him. "You done? Or do I need to make this hurt?" Derek spat out a curse, but the fight had gone out of him. He went limp, his breath coming in angry gasps against the floor. Doc was working on Sarah now, his medical kit open beside him. He checked her pupils with a small flashlight, examined the cut on her lip, gently probed her ribs. "Sarah, can you hear me? Can you tell me where it hurts?" Sarah's eyes focused on him, confusion and pain mixing in her expression. Who are you? Friends of your son? Tyler sent us. He's safe, Sarah. He's at the gas station and he's safe, but I need to know. Can you breathe okay? Any sharp pains in your chest? She shook her head slightly, wincing at the movement. "My ribs, my face, but I can breathe. Tyler, oh God, Tyler saw." "Tyler was very brave," Doc said softly, continuing his examination. "He did exactly what he needed to do. You should be proud of him." In the distance, sirens began to wail, the police finally responding to the 911 call. Marcus felt Derek tense beneath him, heard him mutter something about how this wasn't over, how Marcus and his friends had just made a big mistake. Marcus leaned down, his voice low and hard. "The only mistake here was yours. You put your hands on a woman, you terrorized a child, and you're going to answer for it. The police are on their way, and when they get here, you're going to answer for every bruise on her body. Are we clear?" Derek said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Jake looked over at Marcus from where he held the heavy-set man against the wall. "You good?" "Yeah." "Doc, how is she?" Doc had helped Sarah into a sitting position, supporting her back against the wall. He had applied a gauze pad to her bleeding lip and was checking her pupils again. "She needs to go to the hospital. Possible concussion. Definitely needs x-rays for the ribs, but she's stable. She'll be okay." The sirens grew louder, and moments later, red and blue lights strobed through the broken doorway. 2 police cruisers pulled up outside, followed quickly by an ambulance. Officers entered with weapons drawn, and Marcus calmly identified himself and his companions, explained the situation, and surrendered Derek Thompson to their custody without incident. The heavy-set man and the tweaker were likewise taken into custody, all 3 of them loaded into squad cars with charges pending. The officers took statements from everyone: Marcus, Jake, Doc, Bobby and Sarah, who was being examined by paramedics as she spoke. Throughout it all, the bikers remained calm, professional, answering every question truthfully. Officer Jennifer Hayes, a veteran cop in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and graying hair, spoke with Marcus while her partner coordinated the scene. "You and your friends took a hell of a risk coming in here. What if they'd had guns?" Marcus met her gaze evenly. "Then we would have dealt with it. That woman's son came to us for help. What were we supposed to do? Wait for Derek Thompson to beat her to death while we made phone calls?" Hayes studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I understand. And for what it's worth, you probably saved her life. But I need you to understand. You're not soldiers anymore. This isn't Afghanistan. You can't just roll into town and take the law into your own hands." "We didn't take the law into our own hands," Doc interjected, joining the conversation. "We stopped an assault in progress and held the assailants until you arrived. That's citizen intervention, which is perfectly legal in Indiana." Hayes smiled slightly. "You a lawyer now, too?" "Just a medic who reads a lot." The paramedics were loading Sarah onto a stretcher, preparing to transport her to Millbrook Memorial Hospital. As they carried her past Marcus, she reached out weakly, catching his hand. Her eyes were swollen, but they held a clarity that cut through all the pain. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving my life. Tyler, please tell Tyler I'm okay." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "We will." You focus on getting better. Tyler needs his mother. As the ambulance pulled away, its lights cutting through the gathering dusk, Marcus turned to his brothers. They stood together in the fading light, 4 men bound by more than just a shared love of motorcycles. They had served, they had survived, and tonight they had made a difference. Bobby broke the silence first. "So, we still making it home tonight?" Jake laughed, a short, sharp sound that released some of the tension. "Not a chance. We're going to be giving statements for hours." Doc nodded toward the gas station, visible in the distance. "Someone needs to get Tyler and bring him to the hospital. That kid needs to see his mother." Marcus pulled out his phone. "I'll call ahead, make sure he can visit even though he's a minor." "Hayes, you good with us taking the boy to the hospital?" Officer Hayes considered, then nodded. "Yeah, but one of you only, and I'll need the rest of you to come down to the station to finish your statements." "I'll take him," Marcus said. There was no discussion needed. The others simply nodded. 20 minutes later, Marcus was back at the Crossroads gas station. Tyler sat on a bench outside, the elderly Clark sitting beside him, offering what comfort he could. When the boy saw Marcus pull up on his Harley, he jumped to his feet, his face a mixture of hope and fear. "Your mother is going to be okay," Marcus said immediately, removing his helmet. "She's hurt, but she's going to be fine. The men who hurt her are in police custody, and she wants to see you." Tyler's legs seemed to give out, and he sat back down hard on the bench, his small body shaking with sobs, not of fear this time, but of relief. Marcus sat down beside him, placing a careful hand on the boy's shoulder, letting him cry. After a few minutes, Tyler looked up, wiping his eyes. "Can I see her? Can I see my mom?" "That's why I'm here. Come on. I'll give you a ride to the hospital." Tyler's eyes widened. "On your motorcycle?" "On my motorcycle. But you wear a helmet and you hold on tight. Deal?" "Deal." Marcus found a spare helmet in his saddlebag, one he kept for passengers during charity rides. It was too big for Tyler, but it would work. He helped the boy onto the back of the Harley, showed him where to put his feet, made sure his arms were wrapped securely around Marcus's waist. "Don't be scared of the engine. Just lean when I lean and hold on. Ready?" "Ready." The ride to Millbrook Memorial took 15 minutes through the darkening streets of small-town Indiana. Marcus kept his speed moderate, aware of his precious cargo. Behind him, Tyler held on, with the kind of fierce determination that only children possess. Children who have been through hell and come out the other side, needing to see that their world can still be made right. At the hospital, Marcus parked in the emergency room lot and helped Tyler off the bike. A nurse met them at the entrance. She had been expecting them, thanks to Marcus's phone call. She led them through the sterile hallways to a small examination room where Sarah lay in a hospital bed, her face cleaned up but showing the full extent of her injuries. Both eyes were blackened, her lips stitched, her left arm in a sling. But she was alive. And when she saw Tyler standing in the doorway, her face crumpled and she reached out with her good arm. "Baby! Oh, baby, come here!" Tyler ran to her, careful not to jostle the bed, and Sarah wrapped her arm around him, pulling him close. They held each other and cried. Mother and son, survivors of violence, held together by a love that Derek Thompson had tried and failed to destroy. Marcus stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder on a private moment. He started to back out quietly, but Sarah looked up. "Wait, please, I don't even know your name." "Marcus Sullivan, ma'am." "Marcus." She said his name like a prayer. "I don't know how to thank you. I don't know what would have happened if Tyler hadn't found you. Derek, he was going to kill me. I know he was." Marcus stepped into the room, removing his leather vest out of respect for the sterile environment. "You don't need to thank me. Any decent person would have done the same." "No," Sarah said firmly, despite her injuries. "No, they wouldn't have. People walk past suffering every day. People ignore cries for help because it's not their problem, not their business." You didn't. You and your friends. You risked yourselves for strangers. That's not nothing. That means everything. Tyler looked up at Marcus, his young face serious. Are you a superhero? Despite everything, the violence, the tension, the long day, Marcus laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine. No, son. I'm just a man who rides a motorcycle and tries to do the right thing. That's all any of us can do. Sarah reached out her good hand and Marcus took it. Her grip was weak, but determined. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, if there's ever anything I can do for you or your friends, I mean it. You saved my life tonight. You saved my son's mother. That's a debt I can never repay. There's no debt, Marcus said gently. You just focus on getting better. And when you're back on your feet, you focus on giving that boy the best life you can. That's all the payment anyone needs. A doctor entered then. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and efficient movements. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to speak with Ms. Mitchell about her treatment plan and then complete some documentation for the police report. Marcus nodded, understanding the dismissal. He looked down at Tyler one more time. You take care of your mom, Tyler. And remember, you did good today. You ran for help when it mattered most. That took courage. Will I see you again? Tyler asked. Marcus paused. He had intended this to be a one-time thing. Stop the violence, make sure the victims were safe, move on. That's how these things worked. But looking into the boy's eyes that had seen too much, he found himself nodding. Yes, son, you'll see me again, I promise. Outside the hospital, Marcus stood in the parking lot for a long moment, looking up at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. His phone buzzed, a text from Jake asking if everything was okay. Marcus replied that it was, that he'd meet them at the station shortly, but he didn't move yet. He stood there, breathing in the warm summer air, feeling the weight of what had just happened. They had saved a life tonight. They had stopped evil men from destroying a family. They had given a terrified child his mother back, and somehow Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The Millbrook Police Station was a squat brick building that had been erected in the 1970s and showed every one of its 40-plus years. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a harsh glow on faded linoleum floors and bulletin boards cluttered with wanted posters and community announcements. Marcus sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair in interview room B, giving his statement to Detective Raymond Foster for the third time. Foster was in his late 50s, a career cop with the kind of weathered face that came from decades of dealing with humanity's worst. He had a notepad in front of him, filled with meticulous handwriting, and a digital recorder running on the table between them. His expression was neutral, professional, but Marcus could see the wheels turning behind those tired eyes. So let me make sure I have this straight, Foster said, tapping his pen against the notepad. You and your 3 companions, all veterans, all members of the Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club, were stopped at the Crossroads gas station when Tyler Mitchell approached you asking for help. You rode to the residence at 42 Maple Street, entered the premises, and physically subdued 3 men you found assaulting Sarah Mitchell. Is that correct? That's correct, Marcus said for the 3rd time. We restrained them using minimal force necessary to stop the assault and held them until your officers arrived. Minimal force, Foster repeated. Derek Thompson has a dislocated shoulder. Vernon Briggs, that's the heavyset gentleman, has bruised ribs. And Calvin Peters says Jake Henderson assaulted him. Marcus kept his expression neutral. Derek Thompson was in the process of raising a weapon, the beer bottle, to strike a defenseless woman. I disarmed him and restrained him. His shoulder was dislocated in the process of him resisting. Vernon Briggs injured his ribs when Jake Henderson stopped him from attacking me and Doc. And Calvin Peters attempted to flee the scene of a felony assault. Bobby Crawford prevented him from leaving. If Peters felt assaulted, perhaps he shouldn't have been participating in the beating of an innocent woman. Foster leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus. "You're pretty calm about all this. Most citizens who walk into a violent situation are shaking, adrenaline-crashed, traumatized. You seem unaffected." "I spent 3 tours in Afghanistan, Detective. I've been in worse situations. This was actually pretty straightforward." "That's what worries me," Foster said quietly. 4 combat veterans rolling into town playing vigilante. That's not how the law works, Mr. Sullivan." Marcus felt a flash of anger, but kept it controlled. "We weren't playing vigilante. We responded to a child's plea for help and stopped a felony assault in progress. Indiana law specifically allows citizens to use reasonable force to prevent harm to others. We called 911 before we even entered the property. We held the suspects for law enforcement. We cooperated fully with your officers. We did everything by the book, Detective." Foster was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. And for what it's worth, Sarah Mitchell would probably be dead if you hadn't shown up when you did. Derek Thompson has a history, 2 prior domestic violence arrests, 1 conviction that he served 6 months for. He violated a restraining order to show up at that house tonight. You saved her life. So what happens now? Now we charge Derek Thompson, Vernon Briggs, and Calvin Peters with felony assault, home invasion, violation of a protective order, and a few other charges. Thompson will likely get 5 to 10 years if he's convicted. The other 2 will get less, but they'll do time." Foster closed his notepad. "As for you and your friends, you're free to go. I don't see any charges here. You acted within your rights as citizens. But Mr. Sullivan, a word of advice." "What's that?" "This is a small town. Word travels fast. By tomorrow morning, everyone in Millbrook will know that 4 bikers from out of town beat up Derek Thompson and his buddies. Some people will call you heroes. Others will call you troublemakers. And Derek Thompson has family around here, cousins, uncles, people who might not see things the way the law does. Watch your back." Marcus stood, extending his hand. "I appreciate the warning, Detective, but I'm not worried about Derek Thompson's family. I'm worried about Sarah Mitchell and her son. Make sure they're protected." Foster shook his hand, his grip firm. "We will. She'll have a protective order that actually means something this time, and I'll make sure patrol cars swing by her house regularly. She'll be safe." Outside the interview room, Jake, Doc, and Bobby were waiting in the lobby. They had all given their statements separately, standard procedure, and now they looked tired, ready to finally head home. It was nearly 11 p.m., and the adrenaline had long since worn off, leaving only the bone-deep exhaustion that came after intense situations. "We good?" Jake asked as Marcus approached. "We're good. No charges. They're going after Thompson and his buddies for felony assault and home invasion." Bobby let out a long breath. "Thank God. I was starting to think we were going to end up in legal trouble for helping someone." Doc adjusted his glasses, ever the practical one. "So what now? We still have a 2-hour ride back to Bloomington, or we could find a motel here in town, get some sleep, head out in the morning." Marcus considered. He was exhausted, and riding tired was dangerous. But there was also something about staying in Millbrook that felt unfinished. Tyler's face kept appearing in his mind. The terror, then the relief, then the question, "Will I see you again?" "Let's find a motel," Marcus said. "We'll head out in the morning. I want to check on Sarah and Tyler before we leave town." The others nodded agreement. They found a quality inn just off Route 37, got 2 rooms, and collapsed into sleep that was deeper and darker than any of them had experienced in months. Morning came with the insistent chirping of Marcus's phone alarm. 6 a.m., sunlight streaming through thin motel curtains. He showered, dressed, and met the others in the parking lot. The plan was simple: grab breakfast, stop by the hospital to check on Sarah, then ride home. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. They sat at a corner table with terrible coffee and surprisingly decent breakfast sandwiches, speaking little. The events of the previous day felt almost surreal in the morning light. Had they really ridden into a stranger's house and physically confronted 3 violent men? Yes, they had. "You think we did the right thing?" Bobby asked suddenly, breaking the silence. He was staring into his coffee cup like it held answers. "I mean, I know we stopped something bad from happening, but Foster was right. We're not soldiers anymore. We're not law enforcement. Who are we to ride into town and start cracking skulls?" Doc looked up from his eggs. "We're people who saw someone in need and helped, that's all. The alternative was letting a woman get beaten to death while we waited for the police to maybe show up in time. I can't live with that alternative." Jake nodded slowly. "I keep thinking about Tyler. That kid ran through half the town looking for help, and the only people who stopped were us. What does that say about everybody else he passed?" "It says people are scared," Marcus said quietly. "They're scared of getting involved, scared of consequences, scared of putting themselves at risk. I don't blame them. That's human nature. But we're not most people. We've been trained to run toward danger, not away from it. Last night, that training saved a life." They finished their breakfast in contemplative silence, then made their way back to the main hospital building. At the front desk, they asked about Sarah Mitchell and were directed to the second floor, room 214. The morning shift nurse, a cheerful woman named Patricia, recognized them immediately. "You're the bikers who brought in Sarah and Tyler last night. The whole staff has been talking about you. That woman owes you her life." Marcus felt uncomfortable with the praise. "We just did what anyone should do. How is she?" "Better, stable. She's got a couple broken ribs, a mild concussion, and a lot of bruising and swelling. But she'll heal. Physically, anyway." The psychological trauma. Patricia's cheerful expression faded. "That takes longer, but she's a fighter, and she's got that sweet boy to fight for." They found room 214 at the end of a quiet hallway. Marcus knocked gently, and Tyler's voice called out from inside, "Come in." Sarah was sitting up in bed, looking considerably better than she had the night before, or at least as better as someone with 2 black eyes, a swollen face, and stitches could look. Tyler sat in a chair beside her bed, coloring in a book that one of the nurses had given him. Both of them brightened when they saw who had entered. "Marcus!" Tyler jumped up, the coloring book forgotten. "You came back!" "I told you I would," Marcus said, smiling. He nodded to Sarah. "How are you feeling, Mom?" "Like I was hit by a truck," Sarah said, but there was a note of humor in her voice. "But I'm alive. The doctors say I can go home tomorrow if the x-rays look good. And Detective Foster came by this morning. Derek and his friends are in jail, and they're not getting out anytime soon." "That's good," Doc said, stepping forward. "I'm Thomas Whitaker. We met briefly last night, but you were pretty out of it. I'm the one who did your initial assessment. I'm glad to see you're doing better." Sarah's eyes moved from Doc to Jake to Bobby, taking in all 4 men standing awkwardly in her hospital room. "I still can't believe you all did what you did. Strangers. You were complete strangers, and you risked yourselves for me." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "Anybody would have—" "No!" Sarah interrupted firmly. "No, they wouldn't have. Tyler ran past 6 houses before he got to that gas station. 6 houses where people heard him screaming for help, and nobody opened their door. Nobody called the police. Nobody did anything. You could have done the same. You could have called 911 and kept riding. But you didn't." There was a weight in her words, a truth that made the room feel smaller. Marcus cleared his throat. "What matters is you're safe now. You and Tyler both." Tyler tugged on Marcus's vest. "Can I see your motorcycle again? Mom says you have a Harley." Marcus laughed. "I do. When your mom is feeling better, maybe I'll take you for a proper ride, a longer one than last night." Sarah's expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Marcus, can I ask you something? What you said last night about seeing us again, did you mean it, or was that just something you said to comfort Tyler?" Marcus looked at her, seeing past the injuries to the person beneath, a woman who had survived abuse, who had a child depending on her, who was probably terrified of what came next. He thought about his own life, about the emptiness that sometimes crept in during the quiet moments, about how riding helped, but never quite filled the void left by combat and loss. "I meant it," he said. "If you're okay with it, I'd like to check in on you both. Make sure you're doing all right." Tyler's face lit up with pure joy. "Really? You'll come visit us?" "Really?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "We'd like that. We'd like that very much." They stayed for another 20 minutes, talking about nothing important. Tyler's favorite superheroes, Sarah's job as a receptionist at a dental office, the boys asking about life in Millbrook. Normal conversation, the kind that helped create normalcy after trauma. Then a nurse came to check Sarah's vitals, and the bikers took it as their cue to leave. In the hallway, Doc turned to Marcus. "So we're doing this? We're adopting a family?" Marcus smiled. "Looks like it." Bobby shook his head, but he was grinning. "My wife is going to think I've lost my mind. Hey, honey, guess what? We saved a woman from her abusive ex, and now we're going to be part of their lives." Normal Sunday activities. "Your wife is used to you being crazy," Jake pointed out. "She married you, didn't she?" They were laughing as they walked through the hospital lobby, drawing curious looks from visitors and staff. 4 bikers in leather vests, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world, heading out into the bright Sunday morning. But as they reached their motorcycles in the parking lot, Marcus's instincts, honed by combat and years of reading situations, picked up on something wrong. 3 men stood near the bike, arms crossed, expressions hostile. They weren't Derek Thompson's age. These were older, in their 40s and 50s, with the hard look of manual laborers and hard living. The man in the center, a barrel-chested individual with graying hair and forearms like tree trunks, stepped forward as Marcus approached. "You Marcus Sullivan?" Marcus stopped, his body automatically shifting into a ready stance. "I am. Who's asking?" "Name's Gene Thompson. Derek's my nephew, and I hear you and your boys put him in the hospital last night." "Your nephew was beating a woman half to death," Marcus said evenly. "We stopped him. If you have a problem with that, take it up with the police." Gene Thompson's face reddened. "I don't give a damn what Derek was doing. You don't come into our town and start beating on our family. You understand me? You and your biker friends better get on your rides and get the hell out of Millbrook and don't come back. This is your only warning." Jake and Bobby had moved to flank Marcus now, forming a line. Doc hung back slightly, always the medic, positioning himself to help if things went sideways. The 3 Thompson men noticed the formation and spread out slightly, mirroring the defensive posture. Marcus kept his voice calm, controlled. "We're leaving, but we'll be back to check on Sarah and Tyler. If you or anyone in your family goes near them, if you so much as look at them wrong, we'll hear about it, and then we'll have a problem. Are we clear?" Gene Thompson spat on the ground. "That's a threat." "No," Marcus said quietly. "That's a promise. Derek Thompson violated a protective order and nearly murdered his ex-girlfriend in front of their son. He's going to prison. If his family wants to join him, that's your choice, but leave Sarah and Tyler alone." For a long moment, the 2 groups of men stood in the parking lot, tension crackling between them like static electricity. Other people were starting to notice, giving them a wide berth, some pulling out phones. Marcus calculated odds, angles, consequences. If this turned into a fight, they could handle it, but it would mean police involvement again, potential charges, complications they didn't need. Finally, Gene Thompson took a step back. "You're making an enemy you don't want, Sullivan." "I've had worse enemies," Marcus replied. "Have a good day, gentlemen." The Thompson men left, climbing into a beat-up Ford truck and peeling out of the parking lot with squealing tires. Marcus watched them go, committing the license plate to memory. "Well, that was fun," Bobby muttered. "Think they'll actually try something?" Doc pulled out his phone. "I'm texting Foster, letting him know about the encounter. He said to watch our backs. He should know the Thompsons are making threats." "Good idea," Marcus said. He turned to his brothers. "Listen, this is getting complicated. I'm planning to come back and check on Sarah and Tyler, but I understand if you guys want to sit that out. You all have families, jobs, lives. I won't hold it against you if—" "Shut up," Jake interrupted. "We're in this together. That's how the Brotherhood works. You don't get to go all lone wolf on us just because some redneck made threats in a parking lot." Bobby nodded emphatically. "Besides, my wife would kill me if I let you handle this alone. She's already called you a hero 3 times since I texted her last night. I think she likes you better than me now." Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest, the same feeling he used to get with his unit in Afghanistan, the knowledge that people had his back no matter what. "All right then, we'll handle this together, but let's get out of Millbrook for now. Give things time to cool down." They mounted their bikes, engines roaring to life in the morning air. As they pulled out of the hospital parking lot and onto Route 37, Marcus took one last look at Millbrook in his mirrors. The small town was fading behind him, but he knew he'd be back. He had made a promise to a little boy and his mother, and Marcus Sullivan never broke his promises. The ride back to Bloomington was uneventful, the familiar scenery of rural Indiana rolling past. Cornfields, old barns, small towns that looked like Millbrook. They stopped once for gas and stretched legs, then pushed through the final hour of riding. Marcus lived in a small house on the east side of Bloomington, a modest 2-bedroom place with a garage for his bike and a backyard that needed mowing. It wasn't much, but it was his, paid for with disability checks and the salary from his job as a mechanic at a local garage. He pulled into his driveway at noon, exhausted but wired, his mind still processing everything that had happened in the past 18 hours. Inside, his phone buzzed with messages, one from Detective Foster, acknowledging Doc's text about the Thompson encounter and promising to keep an eye on the situation, one from Jake's wife, thanking him for helping Sarah and inviting him to dinner that week, and one from a number he didn't recognize. He opened it. "This is Sarah Mitchell. The hospital gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to say thank you again, and to let you know Tyler hasn't stopped talking about you. You made a big impression on a little boy who needed a hero. Thank you for being that for him, and for me." Marcus stared at the message for a long time, then typed a simple response. "Take care of yourself and Tyler. I'll check in soon. Marcus." He set the phone down and walked to his refrigerator, pulling out a beer. The house was quiet, empty, the way it had been since his divorce 3 years ago. He had gotten used to the silence, to coming home to no one, to eating dinners alone while watching TV. It was easier that way. No one to worry about, no one to disappoint, no one to see the nightmares that sometimes woke him at 3 a.m. But standing in his kitchen, drinking his beer, Marcus realized something had shifted. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a purpose beyond just existing, beyond just riding and working and trying to forget. Tyler and Sarah needed someone to watch over them, to make sure Derek Thompson's family didn't retaliate, to help them rebuild their lives. And maybe, Marcus thought, maybe he needed them too. 2 weeks had passed since that Sunday in Millbrook, and Marcus had settled into a routine. Every few days, he would ride out to check on Sarah and Tyler, usually in the late afternoon, after his shift at the garage ended. The visits started awkwardly. Polite conversations on the front porch, Marcus standing with his helmet in hand while Sarah assured him they were fine, that Derek was still in jail, that there had been no trouble from his family. But gradually, the visits grew longer and more comfortable. Tyler would run out to see the motorcycle, asking a million questions about how it worked, what it felt like to ride, whether Marcus had ever done any cool tricks. Sarah would invite Marcus inside for coffee, and they would talk about ordinary things. Tyler's school starting up again in the fall, Sarah's return to work at the dental office, Marcus's job fixing cars and bikes. The house at 42 Maple Street had been cleaned up. The broken picture frames had been replaced, the bloodstains scrubbed from the hardwood floors. Sarah had used some of her savings to repair the front door and fix the broken fence. It was still a modest house in a struggling neighborhood, but it was becoming a home again, slowly shedding the violence that had nearly destroyed it. On a Thursday evening in late June, Marcus arrived to find Tyler playing basketball in the driveway with a makeshift hoop attached to the garage. The boy's face lit up when he saw the Harley approaching, and he immediately abandoned his game to run over. "Marcus, watch this!" Tyler grabbed the basketball and demonstrated his free throw technique, which involved more enthusiasm than accuracy. The ball bounced off the rim and rolled into the street. Marcus retrieved it, smiling. "Not bad. You keep practicing, you'll be in the NBA in no time." "That's what Mom says. She also says you're coming to dinner tonight. Are you?" Marcus had received the text from Sarah that afternoon, a casual invitation that felt less casual than it sounded. He had hesitated before responding yes, unsure of what the gesture meant, whether he was crossing some invisible line from protector to something else. "I am," Marcus confirmed, "but only if you promise not to beat me too badly at basketball first." They played one-on-one for 20 minutes. Marcus deliberately missing shots to keep it competitive, Tyler laughing and talking trash with the confidence of an 8-year-old who had finally found something approaching normal childhood again. The sound of his laughter felt like a victory more significant than any military medal Marcus had earned. Sarah appeared in the doorway, wearing jeans and a light blue t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. The bruises on her face had faded to yellowish green, barely visible under makeup. She looked younger when she smiled, less worn down by life. "Dinner's ready. Tyler, go wash your hands. Marcus, come on in." The house smelled like spaghetti and garlic bread, simple, homey smells that reminded Marcus of his childhood in Ohio before his father died and everything got complicated. The small dining table had been set for 3, with mismatched plates and cheerful paper napkins. Tyler bounded to his seat, still energized from the basketball game. They ate family-style, passing the serving bowls, Tyler dominating the conversation with stories from summer camp and questions about motorcycles. Sarah was quieter, watching the interaction between Marcus and her son with an expression that Marcus couldn't quite read. Grateful, certainly, but something else, something more vulnerable. After dinner, Tyler begged to show Marcus his room and his collection of Hot Wheels cars. Marcus followed him down the narrow hallway, listening to the boys' detailed explanations of each vehicle, which ones were the fastest, which ones could do the coolest stunts. The room was small but well kept, with superhero posters on the walls and a bookshelf full of well-worn paperbacks. "Mom reads to me every night," Tyler explained, pointing to the shelf. "We just finished the first Harry Potter book. Have you read it?" "A long time ago," Marcus said. "It's a good one." "Do you have kids?" The question was innocent, curious, but it hit Marcus harder than expected. "No, I don't." "Why not?" Marcus knelt down to Tyler's level, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes life doesn't work out the way you plan. I was married once, but we grew apart. We wanted different things. That's sad. Sometimes. But it's okay. I have friends, and I have my motorcycle, and I get to meet great kids like you. That's pretty good." Tyler considered this seriously, then nodded. "You could be like my uncle. Mom says I don't have any uncles because her family is far away and Derek's family is mean, but you could be my uncle, Uncle Marcus." The title settled over Marcus like a weight and a gift at the same time. He had never been anyone's uncle, had never expected to have that kind of connection with a child. But looking at Tyler's hopeful face, he found himself nodding. "I'd be honored to be your uncle, Tyler." They shook hands solemnly, and Tyler grinned like he had just won the lottery. When they emerged from the bedroom, Sarah was cleaning up the kitchen. Marcus helped dry dishes, while Tyler watched cartoons in the living room, the domestic normalcy of the scene feeling both foreign and comfortable. "He really looks up to you," Sarah said quietly, handing Marcus a wet plate. "I haven't seen him this happy since, well, in a long time. He's a good kid. You've done a great job with him." Sarah was quiet for a moment, staring down at the soapy water. "I used to think I was a terrible mother, letting Derek into our lives, exposing Tyler to that violence. I thought I had failed him in every possible way." "Sarah, no, let me finish." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "I spent so long feeling like I deserved what Derek did to me, like I had made my choices and had to live with the consequences, no matter how bad they got. And then you showed up, you and your friends. And you didn't ask if I deserved help. You didn't ask what I had done to provoke Derek. You just helped. No judgment, no conditions. Do you know how rare that is?" Marcus set down the dish towel. "You didn't deserve any of what Derek did to you. Nobody deserves that. I know that now. Or at least I'm starting to believe it. My therapist says it'll take time to undo all the damage, all the ways Derek made me feel worthless, but I'm trying." She paused, then added softly, "Tyler calls you his uncle now, doesn't he? I heard you two talking. If that's okay with you." "It's more than okay. Marcus, you've done more for us in 2 weeks than most people do in a lifetime. Tyler hasn't had a positive male role model in his life. His biological father was never in the picture. And Derek was the opposite of what a man should be. But you're showing him what strength looks like when it's used to protect, not hurt. What courage looks like when it's in service of others. That's everything." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion he hadn't expected. "I'm just doing what feels right." "I know. That's why it matters." They finished the dishes in comfortable silence, and when the kitchen was clean, Marcus made his excuses to leave. It was getting late, and he had an early shift at the garage in the morning. Tyler extracted a promise for another visit soon, and Sarah walked Marcus out to his bike. The summer evening was warm, fireflies beginning to emerge in the gathering dusk. Marcus put on his helmet, checking his gear with practiced efficiency. Sarah stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself despite the heat. "Marcus, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Why are you doing this? Really? You could have ridden away after that first day and never looked back. You didn't owe us anything, but you keep coming back, keep checking on us, keep being there. Why?" Marcus straddled his Harley, considering the question. He could give her a simple answer, something about doing the right thing or helping those in need. But Sarah deserved the truth. "After I came back from Afghanistan, I struggled to find a purpose," he said. "The army gives you a mission, a reason to wake up every day, and then you come home and that's gone. I went through a divorce, some dark times, a lot of nights wondering what the point of anything was. The Iron Brotherhood helped, having brothers who understood, having the freedom of the road, but there was still something missing. And then Tyler came running up to me at that gas station, and suddenly I had a mission again. Someone who needed me. So maybe I'm the one who should be thanking you for reminding me that there are still people worth protecting, still causes worth fighting for." Sarah's eyes were shining with unshed tears. "You're a good man, Marcus Sullivan." "I try to be." He started the engine, the familiar rumble filling the quiet street. As he pulled away, he looked back once to see Sarah still standing on the porch, watching him go. And for the first time in years, Marcus felt like he was riding towards something instead of away from it. The next Saturday, Marcus brought the whole brotherhood with him. Jake, Doc, and Bobby rode out to Millbrook with their bikes gleaming in the afternoon sun, drawing curious looks from neighbors as they pulled up to 42 Maple Street. Sarah had been warned they were coming, but Tyler's excitement was uncontainable. "Mom! Mom! There's 4 motorcycles! This is the best day ever!" The bikers had come with a purpose beyond just visiting. In the bed of Doc's pickup truck, he had driven separately, were supplies, lumber, paint, tools. The broken fence around the property had been patched, but not properly repaired, and several boards on the porch were rotting. Marcus had suggested they spend the day doing some maintenance work, and Sarah had reluctantly agreed after insisting she couldn't pay them. "We don't want payment," Marcus had told her on the phone. "We want to help. Let us help." By mid-afternoon, the fence was completely rebuilt, stained a fresh cedar color that made the whole property look more cared for. The porch boards had been replaced, and Bobby, who apparently had hidden carpentry skills, had even built a small bench that now sat beside the front door. Tyler had been their assistant, handing out tools, asking questions, generally being underfoot in the way that only enthusiastic children can be. Sarah had made lunch, sandwiches and lemonade served on a picnic blanket in the backyard. They ate together, 5 adults and 1 child, talking and laughing like old friends. Jake told stories about his kids. Bobby complained good-naturedly about his wife's honey-do list. Doc offered medical advice for Sarah's lingering rib pain. It was normal, mundane, perfect. Neighbors had come by throughout the day, curious about the bikers working on Sarah's house. Some were friendly, thanking them for what they had done, expressing relief that Derek Thompson was finally facing consequences. Others were more guarded, particularly the older residents who remembered when Millbrook was more prosperous and less troubled. But one neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, who lived 2 doors down, brought over a pitcher of sweet tea and pulled Marcus aside while the others continued working. "I want you to know," she said, her voice quiet but fierce, "that what you boys did was a blessing. I heard Sarah screaming that day. I heard her, and I didn't call the police because I was scared Derek would come after me next. I've lived with that guilt every day since. You did what I should have done, and I thank you for it." Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he simply squeezed her frail hand gently. "It's okay, Mrs. Patterson. We all do the best we can." As the sun started to set, the work was finished. The house looked transformed, not new, but cared for, loved. Marcus and his brothers packed up their tools, refusing Sarah's repeated thanks and insistence that she owed them. "You don't owe us anything," Marcus said firmly. "Friends help each other. That's all this is." Tyler had fallen asleep on the couch inside, exhausted from his day of helping. Sarah walked the bikers out to their motorcycles, her expression a mixture of gratitude and something deeper. "I don't know how to express what this means to us," she said. "You've given me my life back. You've given Tyler a childhood. You've given us hope that there are good people in the world. I'll never forget that." Jake spoke up from where he was securing his tools to his bike. "Sarah, we've all been where you are in different ways. Combat, divorce, loss, life beats you down sometimes. And when that happens, you need people to lift you back up. That's what community is supposed to be. We're just doing what should have been done a long time ago." Doc nodded. "And we'll keep doing it. You're stuck with us now." As they rode away from Millbrook that evening, the 4 bikers fell into formation on the highway, the rhythm of their engines synchronizing like a heartbeat. Marcus felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. They had made a difference today, a tangible, visible difference in 2 people's lives. The fence would stand for years, the porch would hold strong, and every time Sarah looked at it, she would know that someone cared enough to help. That night, back in his house in Bloomington, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. It was a photo of Tyler sleeping on the couch, still wearing the toy tool belt Bobby had given him, a smile on his peaceful face. The message read, Thank you for showing my son what real heroes look like. Marcus saved the photo and sat for a long time in the darkness of his living room, thinking about heroes and missions and the unexpected ways life could give you purpose when you stopped looking for it. 3 days later, that peace was shattered. Marcus was at work, elbow deep in the engine of a 1970 Chevelle, when his phone rang. Sarah's name on the screen. He answered immediately, wiping grease from his hands. "Sarah? What's wrong?" Her voice was shaking, barely controlled panic. "Marcus, they're here. Derek's cousins. They're outside the house yelling, saying I need to drop the charges against Derek or they'll make me regret it. I called the police, but they said it'll be 15 minutes before anyone can get here. Tyler's inside. He's scared and I don't know what to do." Marcus was already moving, grabbing his keys, heading for his bike. "Lock the doors. Stay away from the windows. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Do not go outside. Do you understand?" "Okay. Please hurry." He hung up and immediately called Jake, explained the situation in terse sentences while kick-starting his Harley. Jake said he'd get Doc and Bobby and they'd meet Marcus there. Then Marcus was riding through traffic like a man possessed, weaving between cars with a skill born from years of experience. The 20-minute ride felt like an eternity, every second counting, every mile marker a reminder that Sarah and Tyler were alone and scared. When he arrived at Maple Street, the scene was exactly as Sarah had described. 2 pickup trucks were parked at aggressive angles in front of the house, blocking the driveway. 4 men stood in the yard, one of them, Gene Thompson, shouting threats at the closed front door, while the others paced like predators circling prey. "You think you can send my nephew to prison? You think there won't be consequences? Drop the charges, Sarah. Drop them or we'll make you wish you had." Marcus killed his engine half a block away and approached on foot, his boots silent on the pavement. He assessed the situation with tactical precision. 4 men, all armed with nothing more than anger and entitlement, no visible weapons. The neighbors were watching from windows, but no one was intervening. Sarah's curtains were drawn, but he could imagine her and Tyler inside, terrified. He pulled out his phone and texted Jake. 4 hostiles, front yard, I'm going in, hurry." Then Marcus stepped into the yard, his voice cutting through Gene Thompson's tirade like a blade. "That's enough. Get off this property, now." All 4 men turned, and Marcus saw the moment Gene recognized him. The older man's face twisted with rage and something else. Satisfaction, like he had been hoping for this confrontation. "Well, well, the hero biker is back. You're too late, Sullivan. We're not leaving until Sarah comes out here and talks to us like an adult. She doesn't owe you a conversation. Derek Thompson beat her nearly to death. He violated a protective order. He's facing the consequences of his own actions. Now leave before I call the police." One of the other men, younger and clearly drunk, stepped forward aggressively. "You think you scare us, old man? There's 4 of us and 1 of you." Marcus didn't move, didn't show fear. He had faced insurgents with actual weapons, had been in firefights where death was a real possibility. 4 drunk rednecks in a front yard didn't even register on his threat scale. "I don't need to scare you. The law is already on my side. You're trespassing, you're violating a protective order by proxy, and you're making terroristic threats. Every one of those charges will stick, so I'll give you 1 more chance. Leave now or deal with the police when they arrive in..." He checked his phone. Approximately 8 minutes. Gene Thompson's face had gone red with fury. "You self-righteous son of a..." He took a step toward Marcus, fists balling, and Marcus shifted his stance automatically, ready for the attack. But before Gene could close the distance, the roar of 3 Harley engines filled the street. Jake, Doc, and Bobby pulled up in formation, dismounting with synchronized precision. The odds had just changed dramatically. "Everything okay here, Marcus?" Jake asked calmly, though his eyes never left the 4 men. "Just explaining property laws to these gentlemen," Marcus replied. "They were just leaving." Gene looked at the four bikers, then at his three companions, calculating odds that no longer favored him. The drunk one still looked ready to fight, but the other two were backing toward their trucks, recognizing when they were outmatched. "This isn't over," Gene spat. "You hear me? This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Doc said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Derek Thompson is going to prison. Sarah Mitchell has a protective order that extends to his family members. If any of you come near her or Tyler again, you'll join Derek in a cell. Those are facts, not threats. Accept them and move on with your lives." The sound of sirens approaching made the decision for them. Gene Thompson climbed into his truck, his companions following suit, and both vehicles peeled out of the neighborhood just as two police cruisers turned onto Maple Street. Officer Hayes was driving the first car, and she surveyed the scene with experienced eyes as she exited her vehicle. Four bikers standing in Sarah Mitchell's yard, the smell of burned rubber from departing trucks still hanging in the air. "Mr. Sullivan, somehow I'm not surprised to see you here. Want to tell me what just happened?" Marcus explained the situation concisely. Sarah's phone call, the Thompson family's threats, their departure when backup arrived. Hayes took notes, interviewed Sarah, who had emerged from the house once the police arrived, and documented everything with professional thoroughness. "We'll be increasing patrols in this neighborhood," Hayes told Sarah, "and I'll be filing charges against Gene Thompson and his associates for violation of the protective order. But Ms. Mitchell, I need you to understand something. This situation is escalating. The Thompson family seems determined to intimidate you into dropping charges against Derek. You need to consider whether staying in Millbrook is safe for you and Tyler." Sarah's face went pale. "This is our home. I can't afford to move. I can't start over somewhere else. Everything we have is here." Marcus stepped forward. "Then we make sure she can stay safely. Officer Hayes, with all due respect, what would you suggest? The law isn't protecting her if Derek's family can just show up whenever they want." Hayes sighed, looking tired. "The law has limitations, Mr. Sullivan. We can arrest them after they violate the protective order, but we can't post an officer here 24/7. And frankly, the Thompson family has deep roots in this town. They have friends, relatives, connections. This could get worse before it gets better." Tyler had been watching from the doorway, his small face frightened. He ran to Marcus now, wrapping his arms around the biker's waist. "Uncle Marcus, I don't want to move. I don't want to leave." Marcus knelt down, looking the boy in the eye. "You're not going to have to move, Tyler. I promise you, we're going to figure this out." After the police left, the four bikers gathered with Sarah in her living room. Tyler sat close to Marcus, still shaken. The adult spoke in serious tones, weighing options, considering solutions. "You could stay with one of us," Jake suggested. "My place in Bloomington has a guest room. You and Tyler would be safe there until the trial is over." Sarah shook her head. "I appreciate that, but I can't uproot Tyler from his home, his school, and I can't ask you to put your family at risk." Doc leaned forward, his analytical mind working through the problem. "Then we need to establish a presence here. Make it clear to the Thompson family that Sarah and Tyler are under protection. Not just occasionally, but consistently." "You mean like a rotation," Bobby said slowly. "One of us here at night when they're most vulnerable?" "Exactly," Doc confirmed. "We take shifts, make sure someone is always nearby. The Thompsons are bullies and cowards. If they know they'll have to go through us to get to Sarah, they'll back down." Marcus looked at his brothers, seeing the commitment in their faces. They were all thinking the same thing. This was bigger than a one-time intervention now. This was a sustained mission, the kind of long-term operation that required dedication and sacrifice. "Are you all sure about this?" Marcus asked. "This could go on for months until Derek's trial. That's a hell of a commitment." Jake shrugged. "I've got nothing better to do than protect a family that needs it. My wife already thinks I'm crazy. This won't change her opinion. Bobby nodded. Count me in. My wife will understand. She's always saying I need to find more meaningful ways to spend my time. Can't get more meaningful than this. Doc simply said, I'm in. Sarah was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I can't ask you to do this. I can't ask you to sacrifice your lives for us. You're not asking, Marcus said gently. We're offering. There's a difference. You and Tyler have become family to us, and family protects family. That night, Marcus took the first watch. He set up a camping chair on Sarah's front porch, visible to anyone who might drive by, a clear message that the house was protected. Sarah had offered him the couch, but he preferred to be outside, where he could see threats approaching. Around midnight, Tyler appeared in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Uncle Marcus, what are you doing? Just making sure you and your mom stay safe, buddy. You should be in bed. Tyler sat down on the porch step beside Marcus's chair. Are the bad men going to come back? Marcus chose his words carefully. They might try, but if they do, I'll be here. And if I'm not here, one of my brothers will be. You don't have to be scared anymore, Tyler. I meant what I said. We're going to keep you safe. Why do you care about us so much? We're not really your family. Marcus looked down at the boy, seeing the vulnerability in his question, the fear that this protection might disappear as suddenly as it had arrived. Tyler, family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to show up for people, about being there when they need you. Your mom and you need someone to show up right now. So that's what we're doing. Like superheroes? Marcus smiled. Like friends, which is better than superheroes because we're real. Tyler considered this, then nodded seriously. Okay, can I stay out here with you for a little while? Sure, but just for a little while. Growing boys need their sleep. They sat together in comfortable silence, the summer night warm around them. Eventually, Sarah came out and gently guided Tyler back to bed, thanking Marcus with a look that conveyed more than words could. Then Marcus was alone with the crickets and fireflies and the distant sound of traffic on Route 37. He thought about the path that had led him here: Afghanistan, divorce, darkness, the slow rebuilding with the Brotherhood, and finally this, sitting on a porch in a small Indiana town, protecting a family that had become his purpose. It wasn't the life he had imagined when he was young, full of dreams about career and achievement, but it was a life that mattered, and that was enough. The night passed without incident. Gene Thompson and his associates didn't return, deterred by the presence of Marcus's motorcycle parked prominently in the driveway. As dawn broke, Jake arrived to relieve Marcus, bringing coffee and donuts. Quiet night? Jake asked. Quiet night, Marcus confirmed. I think they got the message. Good. Doc's taking tomorrow night. Bobby's got Thursday. We'll keep this rotation going as long as we need to. Marcus clapped his friend on the shoulder. Thank you, brother, for all of this. That's what brothers do. Summer bled into fall, and the protection rotation became routine. The Iron Brotherhood members took turns staying at Sarah's house, their presence becoming a familiar sight on Maple Street. The neighbors grew accustomed to seeing motorcycles parked in the driveway, bikers sitting on the porch or working in the yard. What had started as intimidation evolved into integration. The bikers became part of the community fabric, recognized and even welcomed. Mrs. Patterson brought them baked goods. Other neighbors stopped by to chat, to thank them, to share their own stories of enduring Derek Thompson's volatility over the years. The house at 42 Maple Street transformed from a place of fear into something approaching sanctuary, watched over by rotating guardians who asked nothing in return. Tyler started third grade in September, and Marcus made sure to be there for the first day of school, riding his Harley slowly behind the school bus, Tyler waving excitedly from the window. Sarah had returned to work full-time at the dental office, her confidence rebuilding incrementally. The physical bruises had long since healed, but the emotional scars took longer, requiring weekly therapy sessions that she attended religiously. The Thompson family made no further overt moves against Sarah, though there were incidents that suggested they hadn't forgotten. Sarah's car got keyed in the dental office parking lot. Anonymous calls came to her work, hanging up when she answered. Tyler reported seeing Jean Thompson's truck drive slowly past the school one afternoon. But none of these incidents escalated, kept in check by the knowledge that the Iron Brotherhood was watching, waiting, ready to respond. In October, the trial date was finally set for November 15th. Derek Thompson had been denied bail due to his prior record and violation of the protective order, spending the intervening months in county jail. His attorney had tried multiple times to get Sarah to accept a plea deal, reduced charges in exchange for her cooperation, but she refused every offer. She wanted Derek to face full accountability for what he had done. 2 weeks before the trial, Marcus received a phone call from Detective Foster. "Mr. Sullivan, I thought you should know. Derek Thompson has been making threats from jail. He's been telling other inmates that when he gets out, he's going to finish what he started with Sarah. We're taking these threats seriously, and they'll be entered as evidence during the trial. But you and your friends should be extra vigilant. Desperate men do stupid things." Marcus thanked him for the warning and immediately called an emergency meeting of the Brotherhood. They gathered at Jake's house in Bloomington, sitting around the kitchen table with beers and serious expressions. "So what do we do?" Bobby asked. "We can't watch her forever. At some point, Derek's going to get out. Even if he gets 10 years, he'll be released eventually. And then what?" Doc tapped his fingers on the table, thinking. "The real solution is for Sarah and Tyler to relocate. New town, new identity, fresh start where the Thompson family can't find them. But Sarah's made it clear she doesn't want that." Jake looked at Marcus. "You're closest to them. What do you think?" Marcus had been wrestling with this question for weeks. The logical solution was relocation, witness protection style, cutting all ties and disappearing. But he understood why Sarah resisted. This was her home, her job, Tyler's school. She had already lost so much to Derek Thompson. Why should she lose her entire life too? "I think," Marcus said slowly, "that we need to change the equation. Right now, the Thompson family sees Sarah as a victim, someone they can intimidate. We need to make them see her as someone who has powerful friends, people who won't go away, people who will respond to any threat with overwhelming force. Not violence, but legal, social, and community pressure that makes targeting her more trouble than it's worth." "You're talking about public pressure," Doc said, nodding slowly. "Making this story visible enough that the Thompsons know they're being watched by more than just us." "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "There's a reporter from the Bloomington Herald who's been following domestic violence cases in the area. I reached out to her last week, told her about Sarah's situation. She's interested in doing a story, not just about the assault, but about the community response, the Brotherhood's protection, the systemic failures that let Derek Thompson nearly kill someone despite having prior convictions." Bobby leaned back in his chair. "Media attention cuts both ways. It could put an even bigger target on Sarah's back. Or it could make her untouchable," Jake countered. "Think about it. If this story goes public, if people know what happened and see the Brotherhood standing with Sarah, any retaliation becomes a public relations disaster for the Thompson family. They're bullies, and bullies thrive in shadows. Shine a light on them, and they scatter." They debated for another hour, weighing risks and benefits, finally agreeing to present the idea to Sarah and let her decide. Marcus drove to Millbrook that evening, finding Sarah in the kitchen making dinner while Tyler did homework at the table. When Marcus explained the media proposal, Sarah's first reaction was fear. "I don't want to be in the news. I don't want everyone knowing what happened to me, judging me, asking why I stayed with Derek as long as I did." Marcus sat down across from her, his voice gentle but firm. "Sarah, what happened to you isn't shameful. Derek's actions are shameful. Your survival is something to be proud of, and telling your story could help other women in similar situations, show them that they can fight back, that there are people who will help them." Tyler looked up from his homework. "I think you should do it, Mom. Then everyone will know Uncle Marcus and his friends are heroes." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "You really think it could help?" "I know it could," Marcus said, "but only if you're comfortable with it. We'll support you either way." After a long moment, Sarah nodded. "Okay, let's do it. Tell the reporter I'll talk to her." The interview took place the following week at Sarah's house. Jennifer Chen, the reporter from the Bloomington Herald, was in her early 30s, professional but compassionate. She spent 3 hours interviewing Sarah, Marcus, and briefly Tyler, taking extensive notes and photos with Sarah's permission. The article ran on the front page of the Herald the following Sunday, with a headline that read, "When a child's cry for help met men ready to answer. How a veterans motorcycle club saved a domestic violence victim." The story was powerful, detailing Tyler's desperate run for help, the Brotherhood's intervention, the ongoing protection they provided, and Sarah's courage in pressing charges against Derek despite his family's intimidation attempts. It included quotes from Detective Foster praising the biker's actions, and from Sarah herself. "These men didn't know us. They had no obligation to help, but they saw someone in need, and they acted. They didn't just save my life that day, they saved my son's future. They showed Tyler that there are good people in the world, that violence doesn't always win. I can never repay that debt." The article went viral, picked up by state news outlets and then national media. Within days, Sarah's story was being discussed on domestic violence awareness forums, shared on social media, featured in segments about community heroes. The Iron Brotherhood received hundreds of messages, some thanking them, others from domestic violence victims asking for help, still others from veterans wanting to join chapters or start similar organizations in their own communities. The attention was overwhelming, but mostly positive. Donations poured in for Sarah, money to help with medical bills, legal fees, and Tyler's education. Local businesses offered support. The dental office where Sarah worked received so many calls praising their employee that her boss gave her a raise and better hours. But the most significant effect was on the Thompson family. Suddenly, they weren't anonymous bullies in a small town. They were the villains in a national story. Their employer, a local construction company, fired Gene Thompson after clients complained about being associated with someone who had terrorized a domestic violence victim. Derek's other relatives faced social ostracism, whispers and glares wherever they went. The pressure worked. 1 week before the trial, Marcus received a text from Detective Foster. "Gene Thompson and family have retained an attorney. They're making a public statement, disavowing Derek's actions and pledging to leave Sarah alone. Looks like your media strategy worked." The trial itself was almost anticlimactic. Derek Thompson's attorney, recognizing the impossibility of winning in the court of public opinion, convinced his client to accept a plea deal. Derek pled guilty to felony assault, home invasion, and violation of a protective order, receiving a sentence of 12 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 8. Sarah attended the sentencing hearing with Marcus beside her, Tyler staying with Doc's family for the day. When the judge read the sentence, Sarah gripped Marcus's hand so tightly he lost circulation in his fingers. But when it was done, when Derek was led away in chains, she finally exhaled a breath she seemed to have been holding for months. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting, but Sarah declined to make a statement beyond a brief. Justice was served today. "I'm grateful to everyone who supported my son and me through this ordeal." In the parking lot, away from cameras, Sarah turned to Marcus. "It's really over. He's going away for 12 years. Tyler will be 20 years old when Derek gets out. He won't even remember being afraid of him. It's over, Marcus confirmed. You're safe now. Tyler's safe. You both get to have a life without fear. Sarah hugged him then, a long embrace that held months of gratitude, relief, and something else, something neither of them was quite ready to name. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears, but also with hope. "What do we do now?" she asked. Marcus smiled. Now you live. You focus on Tyler, on your job, on being happy. That's what you do now. That evening, the Iron Brotherhood threw a celebration at a local bar they frequented, inviting Sarah, Tyler, and several of the neighbors from Maple Street who had befriended them over the months. It was a joyful gathering, full of laughter and stories, and the kind of camaraderie that comes from shared struggle. Tyler, drinking a Shirley Temple and feeling very grown up, stood on a chair and clinked his glass with a spoon, demanding attention. The crowd quieted, smiling at the serious expression on the little boy's face. "I want to say something," Tyler announced. "Uncle Marcus and Uncle Jake and Uncle Doc and Uncle Bobby, you're the best uncles ever. You saved my mom and you saved me. And when I grow up, I want to be just like you. I want to help people who are scared and make them safe. Thank you for being my heroes." There wasn't a dry eye in the bar. Marcus lifted his beer in a toast. "To Tyler, the bravest kid I know. And to his mom, who showed us all what courage really looks like." "To Sarah and Tyler," the crowd chorused, glasses raised. As the celebration continued, Marcus stepped outside for some air, standing on the sidewalk and looking up at the November stars. He felt a presence beside him and turned to find Sarah wrapped in a jacket against the autumn chill. "Needed a break from being the center of attention?" Marcus asked. "Something like that," Sarah said. She was quiet for a moment, then, "Marcus, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I don't know if it's appropriate or if you feel the same way, but I need to say it." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. "Okay, you've become so important to us. To Tyler, obviously. He worships you. But to me too. You've been there for us in every way that matters. You've been patient and kind and strong when we needed strength. And somewhere along the way, I started feeling more than gratitude. I started feeling something I wasn't sure I'd ever feel again after Derek. Something like hope. Something like caring about you. Not just as a friend or protector, but as..." She trailed off, and Marcus found himself holding his breath. He had felt it too, the shift from protection to something deeper, but he had pushed it aside, telling himself it was inappropriate, that Sarah was vulnerable and he was taking advantage of that vulnerability. But looking at her now, seeing the courage it took for her to speak these words, he realized he had been lying to himself. "I care about you too," Marcus said quietly. "I have for a while. But I didn't want to complicate things. Didn't want you to feel obligated or pressured. You've been through hell, Sarah. The last thing you need is someone pushing you into something you're not ready for." "I am ready," Sarah said firmly. "I'm ready to stop being a victim and start being someone who chooses her own life. And I'd like to see where this goes, if you're willing." Marcus looked at this remarkable woman, survivor, mother, fighter, and felt something shift in his chest, a door opening that he had kept locked since his divorce. "I'm willing," he said. "But we go slow, no pressure, no expectations, just seeing what happens." Sarah smiled, and it transformed her face, made her look younger and lighter than he had ever seen her. Slow sounds perfect. They stood together in the November cold, not touching, but connected by something stronger than physical proximity, shared experience, mutual respect, and the tentative beginning of something that might become love. 6 months later, spring arrived in Indiana with the usual temperamental weather. Sunshine one day, thunderstorms the next, everything turning green and alive after the brown dormancy of winter. At 42 Maple Street, Sarah's garden was blooming, tended carefully by hands that were learning to create instead of merely survive. Marcus's truck was parked in the driveway more often than not these days. He had moved into the house gradually, almost without intention, first keeping a toothbrush there, then clothes, then his tools when he started working on renovating the kitchen. It had been Sarah who finally said, "You know you basically live here now, right? We should make it official." So he had, not immediately. They had taken their time, building trust, allowing Tyler to adjust to the idea of Marcus as a permanent fixture rather than a visiting protector. But by March, Marcus had sold his house in Bloomington and officially moved into the blue house with the white picket fence in Millbrook. Tyler had celebrated by making a "Welcome Home Uncle Marcus" banner that now hung in the living room, a little crooked and decorated with hand-drawn motorcycles. The 9-year-old had adapted remarkably well to the changes, thriving in the stability that Marcus and the Brotherhood provided. His grades had improved, he had joined a baseball team, and the fear that used to haunt his eyes had been replaced by the normal exuberance of childhood. On a Saturday morning in April, Marcus stood in the driveway teaching Tyler basic motorcycle maintenance. The boy sat astride Marcus's Harley, engine off, kickstand down, while Marcus explained the importance of regular oil changes and tire pressure checks. When you're old enough to ride, you need to understand that a motorcycle isn't just a toy. It's a machine that requires respect and care. You treat it right, it'll take care of you. You neglect it, and you're asking for trouble. Tyler listened with intense concentration, occasionally asking questions that showed he was actually absorbing the information rather than just waiting for his turn to sit on the bike. Marcus felt a swell of pride. This kid was smart, eager to learn, and growing into someone special. Sarah watched from the porch, coffee cup in hand, a smile playing at her lips. Her life had transformed so completely from where it had been a year ago that sometimes she had to stop and verify that this was real, that she wasn't dreaming. She had a job she enjoyed, a home that felt safe, a son who was happy, and a man who treated her with respect and affection. The relationship with Marcus had developed slowly, carefully, both of them conscious of the need to build on solid ground rather than rushing into something neither was prepared for. There had been setbacks, nights when Sarah woke from nightmares of Derek, moments when she flinched from sudden movements, therapy sessions where she worked through trust issues and trauma responses. Marcus had been patient through all of it, never pressuring, always supporting, giving her the space to heal at her own pace. And gradually, healing had come. Not complete. Trauma didn't work that way, but significant. Sarah could sleep through the night now. She could be touched without tensing. She could imagine a future that included happiness, partnership, maybe even love. No, not maybe. Definitely love. Because somewhere along the way, gratitude and respect had deepened into something genuine and lasting. The sound of motorcycles approaching broke her reverie. 3 Harleys turned onto Maple Street, Jake, Doc, and Bobby, arriving for the monthly Brotherhood barbecue that had become tradition. They pulled into the driveway, greeting Tyler enthusiastically and good-naturedly teasing Marcus about his domestic life. "Look at you," Jake said, grinning. "Marcus Sullivan, suburban dad. Never thought I'd see the day." "Domestic life looks good on him," Doc observed. "He's gained weight, in a good way. You were too skinny before, Marcus." Bobby high-fived Tyler. "How's my favorite biker in training?" "Uncle Marcus is teaching me about motorcycles," Tyler announced proudly. "I know how to check tire pressure now." "Impressive. When you turn 16, we'll teach you to actually ride." 16, Tyler's face fell. "But that's like 7 years away." 7 years goes faster than you think, kid, Jake said, ruffling his hair. They set up the barbecue in the backyard, Marcus grilling burgers and hot dogs, the others setting up chairs and a table, Sarah bringing out potato salad and drinks. Neighbors stopped by throughout the afternoon, Mrs. Patterson with her famous lemon bars, the Rodriguez family from across the street, even Officer Hayes, who was off duty and accepted a burger with thanks. It had become a community event, these monthly gatherings. What had started as 4 bikers protecting a family had evolved into something larger, a support network, a chosen family that extended beyond blood relations. The brotherhood had become part of Millbrook's fabric, welcomed and valued in ways that surprised even them. As the afternoon wore into evening, Tyler fell asleep on a lawn chair, exhausted from playing with the Rodriguez kids. The adults sat around the fire pit Marcus had built, talking in the comfortable way of people who had shared hardship and come out stronger. "Got some news," Doc said, breaking a comfortable silence. "Remember all those messages we got after Sarah's story went public? People asking for help, veterans wanting to start similar groups?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "We must have gotten 200 messages." "Well, I've been working with a few veterans organizations to formalize the concept, creating a template for other Brotherhood chapters to form specifically around supporting domestic violence victims. We've got interest from groups in Ohio, Kentucky, Missouri, even California. They want to replicate what we did here." Jake whistled low. "That's huge, Doc. You're talking about a nationwide network." "Potentially. The need is definitely there. Domestic violence affects millions of people every year, and a lot of them don't have anyone to call when things get dangerous. Having a visible, organized group of veterans willing to provide protection could save lives." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes bright with interest. "What would you call it?" Doc smiled. "That's still being decided, but the working title is Warriors Watch, veterans watching over those who can't protect themselves." "I love that," Sarah said softly, "and I want to help, however I can. Speaking to other survivors, helping with outreach, whatever you need." Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand. "You sure? You don't owe anyone your story or your time?" "I know I don't owe it. I want to give it. What you all did for me changed everything. If sharing what happened can help someone else find the courage to leave an abusive situation or know that there are people who will help them, that feels important. It feels like turning something terrible into something meaningful." Bobby nodded slowly. "My wife said something similar. She wants to get involved too, maybe help with fundraising or coordinating volunteers. I think this could really become something." They talked long into the night, planning and dreaming, building a vision of something larger than themselves. By the time the fire burned down to embers and everyone headed home, they had the outline of a real organization, one that could potentially help thousands of families in situations like Sarah's. The following weeks were busy with planning. Doc took the lead on paperwork and logistics, working with lawyers to establish Warriors Watch as a non-profit organization. Jake handled outreach to veterans groups and law enforcement agencies. Bobby coordinated with domestic violence advocacy organizations. And Marcus, somewhat reluctantly, became the public face of the organization, doing interviews and speaking engagements about their mission. Sarah joined him for many of these appearances, telling her story with increasing confidence. She spoke at women's shelters, community centers, even a state legislature hearing on domestic violence legislation. Her testimony was powerful, raw, and impossible to ignore. "I thought I was alone," she would tell audiences. "I thought no one would help me, that I deserved what was happening because of choices I had made. But when my son ran for help, these men didn't hesitate. They didn't ask if I deserved rescue. They just acted. That's what community should be. People ready to help when help is needed most. And that's what Warriors Watch is building. A network of people who won't look away from suffering, who will stand between victims and their abusers, who will say, 'Not on my watch.'" The response was overwhelming. Within 3 months, Warriors Watch had established chapters in 8 states, with more forming every week. Veterans were volunteering, training in domestic violence response protocols, coordinating with local law enforcement. Lives were being saved. In June, Tyler finished 3rd grade with straight A's and a Teacher's Choice Award for Most Improved Student. Marcus and Sarah attended the ceremony together, sitting in the elementary school gymnasium with proud parent smiles. When Tyler crossed the stage to receive his certificate, he searched the audience until he found them, his face lighting up with joy that made everything worthwhile. After the ceremony, Tyler ran up to them, waving his certificate. Did you see me get my award?" "We saw, buddy," Marcus said, lifting him into a hug. "We're so proud of you." "Can we celebrate? Can we go to Pizza Palace?" Sarah laughed. "Absolutely. Pizza Palace it is." As they walked to the parking lot, Tyler between them holding both their hands, Sarah felt a completeness she had never experienced before. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Safe, joyful, supportive. Not perfect. They still had challenges, still worked through issues, but fundamentally sound. That evening at Pizza Palace, surrounded by the chaos of children's birthday parties and arcade games, Marcus pulled out a small box. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Before you panic," Marcus said, smiling. "This isn't what you think, or maybe it is, but not in the way you think." He opened the box to reveal not a ring, but a small silver pendant on a chain, the Warriors Watch logo, an eagle with spread wings. "I wanted you to have this," Marcus said, "because you're as much a part of this organization as any of us. You had the courage to press charges, to tell your story, to help other women find their voices. This is yours. You're one of us now." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as Marcus fastened the chain around her neck. Tyler leaned over to examine it closely. "That's so cool, Mom. You're like an honorary biker." Everyone laughed, and the moment passed into memory. One of countless small moments of connection that were building a life worth living. In August, Marcus received a phone call from Detective Foster. "Thought you'd want to know. Derek Thompson was involved in an altercation in prison. Nothing life-threatening, but he's being moved to a higher security facility, further from Millbrook, harder for family to visit, probably for the best." Marcus thanked him for the update and relayed the information to Sarah. Her response was telling, not fear or anxiety, but a simple good. The further away, the better. She had moved on. They all had. Derek Thompson was becoming what he should have always been. A chapter closed, not the defining story of their lives. In October, on the anniversary of the day Tyler had run to the Crossroads gas station, the town of Millbrook held a community appreciation event. The mayor gave a speech praising the Iron Brotherhood's intervention and the ongoing work of Warriors Watch. Marcus, Jake, Doc, and Bobby were presented with civilian commendation medals. Sarah and Tyler were recognized for their courage. But the moment Marcus would remember most came after the official ceremony ended, when an older woman approached him hesitantly. "Mr. Sullivan, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Janet Cooper. My daughter was in an abusive relationship last year. She saw Sarah's story in the news, and it gave her the courage to leave. She's safe now, living 2 states away, starting over. I just wanted to thank you. You saved my daughter's life without ever meeting her." Marcus was moved beyond words. This was the ripple effect Sarah had talked about. One story inspiring another, one act of courage giving permission for countless others. "I'm glad your daughter is safe, Mom. That's what this is all about." As the sun set on that October evening, the community gathered in the park for a potluck dinner. Children played on the playground, adults mingled and talked, and the Iron Brotherhood sat together on picnic tables, watching the life they had helped preserve and protect. "You know what the best part of all this is?" Jake said, gesturing at the scene before them. A year ago, we were just four guys on a charity ride. Now we're part of something that actually matters. We've built something that will outlast us. Not just us, Doc corrected. Tyler built it too. If that kid hadn't been brave enough to ask for help, none of this would have happened. Speaking of Tyler, Bobby said, nodding toward the playground where the boy was playing tag with friends. He seems like a completely different kid from the terrified child we met last year. Because he is different, Marcus said. He's safe. He's loved. He's got people who protect him not because they have to, but because they choose to. That changes everything. Sarah joined them, settling onto the bench beside Marcus. She had been talking with other domestic violence survivors who had reached out to Warriors Watch, sharing resources and support. She looked tired, but satisfied. "How's it going?" Marcus asked. "Good. Amazing, actually. 3 new families just contacted us from southern Indiana. We're connecting them with the Evansville chapter." She leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder. "I never imagined my life could look like this. A year ago, I was just trying to survive. Now I'm helping other people survive. It's surreal." "It's what you were meant to do," Marcus said softly. "You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and transformed it into something that helps others. That's real strength, Sarah." She looked up at him, and in her eyes, Marcus saw reflection of his own journey, from darkness to purpose, from isolation to belonging, from surviving to truly living. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything. Thank you for letting us help, for trusting us, for building this life with us." Tyler ran over then, breathless and grinning. "Uncle Marcus, Mom, can we go on a motorcycle ride tomorrow, all of us, like a real family ride?" Marcus looked at Sarah, who nodded. "Absolutely. Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere, just as long as we're together." "Together it is," Marcus confirmed. As the evening progressed and stars emerged overhead, the gathering slowly dispersed. Families headed home. The Brotherhood packed up their motorcycles, and Tyler eventually fell asleep in the truck on the drive back to Maple Street. Marcus carried him inside and tucked him into bed while Sarah cleaned up the kitchen. When he returned to the living room, she was standing at the window, looking out at the quiet street. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, coming to stand beside her. "About how far we've come, about Tyler sleeping safely in his bed without nightmares, about waking up every morning without fear, about having a partner who respects me, supports me, loves me." She turned to face him. "About how one terrible day led to the best thing that ever happened to us." Marcus pulled her into an embrace, holding her close. "I love you, Sarah Mitchell. You and Tyler both. You're my family now." "I love you too," she whispered into his chest. "Thank you for showing us what love is supposed to look like." They stood together in the darkness of the living room, 2 survivors who had found each other in the aftermath of violence and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Outside, the street was quiet, peaceful, safe, and on the porch, barely visible in the dim light, sat the bench Bobby had built. A symbol of friends who showed up when it mattered, of communities that protected their vulnerable, of the extraordinary power of ordinary people choosing to do the right thing. In the distance, the sound of a motorcycle engine rumbled. Doc heading home after a long day. The sound faded into the night, leaving only the crickets and the gentle wind through trees. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new families needing help, new chapters in the growing story of Warriors Watch. But tonight was for rest, for gratitude, for the quiet satisfaction of lives saved and purposes found. Tyler slept peacefully in his room, dreaming of motorcycles and heroes. Sarah stood in her living room, held by a man who had proven that not all strength came with violence, that protection could be gentle, that love could heal. And Marcus Sullivan, combat veteran and unlikely hero, finally understood that he had found what he had been searching for since returning from Afghanistan, a mission that mattered, brothers who stood beside him, and a family worth fighting for. The blue house on Maple Street stood strong against the night, its lights warm and welcoming, a beacon of hope in a neighborhood that had seen too much darkness. And 4 motorcycles, parked in driveways across Millbrook and Bloomington, sat ready for whatever tomorrow might bring, silent sentinels of a brotherhood that had learned the most important lesson of all. That courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. That heroism isn't about capes and superpowers, but about showing up when someone needs you. And that family isn't defined by blood, but by the people who choose to stand with you when the world gets dark. Tyler Mitchell had run crying to a group of bikers one desperate summer day, and in doing so, had set in motion a chain of events that would change countless lives. His mother had been saved, his future had been secured, and a movement had been born that would protect thousands of families in the years to come. The revenge he had sought wasn't brutal in the way that word usually implies. It was something more powerful. It was justice, community, and the triumph of good people choosing to act. It was proof that darkness doesn't always win, that predators can be stopped, and that sometimes the scariest-looking strangers turn out to be exactly the heroes you need. As spring turned to summer and summer to fall, life continued at 42 Maple Street. There would be challenges ahead, there always were, but they would face them together as a family, supported by a brotherhood that had proven its worth 1,000 times over. And somewhere in a prison cell 200 miles away, Derek Thompson served his sentence, a cautionary tale about the consequences of violence and the communities that refused to tolerate it. But his story didn't matter anymore. Not really. What mattered was the sound of Tyler's laughter, the strength in Sarah's smile, the rumble of motorcycles protecting those who needed protection, and the knowledge that in a world that could be cruel and dark, there were still people willing to be lights.